Why are some church leaders opposed to the proposed hate crimes and hate speech bill? To what extent does the bill impact freedom of expression and religion? Would religious leaders intentionally offend congregants through their sermons? What does the Bible say about homosexuality? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Rosalia Whitehead, standing in for Mpotsedu. A group of church leaders in Durban say they will approach the courts to oppose the passing of the hate crimes and hate speech bill. They say it silences the church from speaking on sensitive issues that affect their communities. The LGBTI community has welcomed the bill, though, saying it strikes a balance between teaching what is in the religious text without offending or dehumanizing other people. This comes in the wake of the controversy surrounding Ghanaian Bishop Dag Heward-Mills' comments on homosexuality at the Grace Bible Church last week. Meanwhile, the deadline for submissions on the bill closed on Monday. We are live, therefore you can call us and air your views on the following numbers: 089-110-4210, or tweet us your comments. Our handle is @QuestionTime. Welcome to all of my guests. Criminalizing hate crimes and hate speech on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, and nationality. In light of our past and in light of recent events, this sounds reasonable. Are you in favor of this, Pastor Lazarus?
Thank you, Rosila. Good afternoon, and afternoon to the viewers as well. We are in favor in the sense of the broader perspective of how the church could contribute, but not how the bill has been drafted and how it's been presented. And I think as MLCR, we want to place that on record, that the bill that took 4 years in the making had only given the community and the public just 1 month to comment. Mm-hmm. And when we do read through this and we find that this bill is absolutely broad in such a way that it might cause prejudice to the broader church, and hence the opposition to the petition because of the deadline. Mm-hmm. And we're looking for more of a consultation to see how we could support if need be. Otherwise, if the bill is left on its and the way it is drafted, then we stand to oppose it in its totality. Okay, Reverend Tebogo Class, do you support this bill?
Well, we do support the bill. Firstly, because it is in itself, a process which had engaged, especially the LGBTI community, in the process. We do know that it is not perfect. It has to be engaged, it has to be engaged. In fact, that there are still processes which will engage it, and it does not stop people from continuing to engage the bill. For instance, in Parliament, as the legislation is fine-tuned and all of that, still public is open. The public is open to participate in the process.
I'm afraid we have to take a short break. We'll be back after this to discuss the prevention and combating of hate crimes and hate speech bill.
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle. Straight into your mouth. Tops its bar. Good beer, good advice, no Ponzi beer stuff.
Welcome back. My guests are Pastor Lazarus Pillay, spokesperson for the Ministerial Leaders for Christian Rights, and Reverend Deb Heward-Mills, the Other Foundation Religion Program Officer. Joining us from our Hatfield studio is Steve Litsike, LGBTI activist. Welcome. Steve, are you in support of this bill?
Definitely, I am in support of this bill, and in fact, even my organization, Access Chapter 2, is in support of it, particularly because it's about preventing the attacks to people on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, and many other grounds. We're preventing the attacks or speeches that seems to, really signal or contribute to prejudice or violence that might be perpetrated against the individuals.
Okay, Pastor Lazarus, are you opposed to everything in the bill, or is it just about sexual orientation?
No, it's about everything. As I said earlier, it's the bill. And I think, being invited to so many forums and platforms, especially through the media, I have noticed that there's just this particular area of where the homosexuality or the race orientation is become more a fundamental concern. And I think for the church, we're not just talking on the one aspect, we're looking at the broadness. So there might be areas that there might be some clarity that needs to be drawn from the Department of Justice and such as the organizational trade, for example. If you speak broadly in the area of trade, and the bill calls for trade in an area, and if sacred scriptures are calling that thou shalt not murder, and if you're talking particularly about murder, and murder could then be taken as though you are against abortion in the sense, and that's trade. Organizational trade. So that is part of one of the sections of the bill as well, in section 5 of the bill that has drafted. And there's so many other sections of where it could be construed as that there's an attack on that specific area, whether it's race, gender, or organizational trade. You might talk about some people might get offended in their business in the area of gambling if you speak that gambling might be as an addiction. Or the scriptures might speak about addiction in general, and in the broadness of this bill, there might be offense taken, and this offense could then trigger off concerns from public and then practitioners in the spiritual angle. And we're not just only talking about the church as well. I think this bill also affects all religions and religious bodies across, or any other organization that speak publicly in the upliftment for the moral fiber of communities and societies. So the concern is, and I think we must speak to our country and the citizens of this country, that particularly, and I think there's been a major uproar in that area, is that the broadness of the bill, the bill's timing, and I think as a church we're saying we need to communicate, and across all forums we need to communicate, and I think government needs to have that opportunity to communicate with everyone, including the activists that are so pro for the bill as well. And I think everyone will have a contribution, but for the church we say a consultative approach to see how it's going to affect us as practitioners, as spiritual leaders, and opposing to the sacred scriptures.
Okay. Steve, do you buy that?
You see, I think it's very important we don't disregard the idea of social policies that exist. In here, we are talking about respect of these clauses within the Constitution that have always been silenced by the ideology of freedoms of speech. Now, we are not saying that the faith sector or leaders don't have the obligation to speak about their scripts and many others and how it's interpreted. However, where a person or individual feels attacked, that's where the problem is, because the individual is protected according to the laws of this country, which is one rule as enshrined in the Constitution. Now, an individual feels attacked, it must be addressed, and protection is in the law. And freedom of speech whatsoever can still be allowed to anyone, however, it should not hamper on individuals' rights.
I'm afraid we have to take another short break. We'll continue this discussion where we talk about the prevention and combating of hate crimes and hate speech bill.
SABC moved to ease tensions created by the heated public spat between National Treasury and Eskom.
Eskom denied allegations of impropriety regarding the matter. National Treasury issued a statement accusing Eskom of lying.
The fracas over hairstyles at a Pretoria school has drawn sharp focus on underlying racism and alleged abuse in some schools.
We want relevant answers from the MEC. You must fire the principal.
Here too, similar sentiments of underlying racism.
It just made me feel like I was not worthy enough of an education because of the type of hairstyle that I had. Because yesterday the statement was, writing an exam is a privilege.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. You can call us and air your views. The numbers to dial at 089 110 4210. And on the line, we've got Jackson from Gauteng. Welcome, Jackson. Please go ahead with your question or comment. Hello, Jackson. Please go ahead.
Your call has been placed.
Okay, I'm afraid we have lost Jason. But Pastor Lazarus, I just want to come back to the issue of sexual orientation for this discussion. I mean, the church has been known to petition or even go on marches for issues such as women's rights or even racism. In your view, why is sexual orientation different?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because my learned colleague up in Pretoria did mention that earlier that there is legislation that's provided for such concerns of the church. Mm-hmm. And, this bill doesn't leave much for interpretation, because legislation is legislation and interpretation is interpretation. So as my learned colleague said, that, is that if you affect someone who is taking, you must allow that person to have the freedom to respond in their own personal views if they have been attacked. And how does that leave one for interpretation as far as legislation is concerned? So when it comes to sexual orientation as well, as I said to you, that the Bible, the sacred scriptures and the church does not attack anyone, nor does it promote the violence against any individual, no matter what their sexual orientation might be or their choice might be. But at the end of the day, the Bible and the church will have to speak totally against what the scriptures are saying, as we say that it speaks against the sin and not the person.
Okay,
it encourages.
We've got another call on the line. Welcome, Thabo. Please go ahead with your question or comment.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And you? Please go ahead with your question or comment.
Yes, I'm totally against the discrimination of any person. But the problem that we are going to face here in this country, are they going to change the Bible? Because what is in the Bible, no matter how are we going to the reverend or the pastors, how are they going to express themselves when coming to the interpretation of the Bible? Because if God says that He does not allow a woman to marry a woman or a man to marry a man, how are you going to explain to the congregation? My question is the Bible going to change? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thabo. Reverend Class, how do you respond to that?
Yes, it's an interesting question, of course. Here is at the heart. The Bible, if we looked at it, has the highest values, which must be the values that pull us together. For instance, it's firstly the human dignity of all persons, solidarity among people, love, compassion. These are the driving principles that emerge from the Bible. It therefore means that the manner in which we approach the Bible should at least be approached from those bases, rather than approaching on things that are negative. Because if we were to go verse to verse and you say homosexuality is a sin because that's what the Bible says, then I would say, can you check what you are putting on? What type of linen are you putting on? I should ask you what type of food are you eating? Because the Bible says that's sinful to do that. So the issue for me is what commitment and what choice are you making? And I want to believe that churches have a responsibility for social cohesion, a responsibility of building solidarity among people, and this should be the case that we should do. In fact, I've even argued further that in us reading the Bible as churches we've got to approach it from a pastoral point of view rather than from a preaching point of view. Because our prophetic ministry should be where people are, seek to discern God's will rather than regurgitating what used to be or what we've had being an ancient practice. So those are the kinds of things that we are. In fact, I even want to underline this by saying we are where we are today as a country because of those who saw pastoral and prophetic ministry as critical. And that is why even the Constitution, they made the kind of inputs that were made to bring us to this constitutional democracy that we are in.
Okay, we've got another call on the line. Tepiso, welcome. Please go ahead with your question or comment.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm fine, thanks, and you?
Not so bad. Let me make my contribution this. I am a traditional healer myself, and there are churches who disapprove of that practice. So I don't view it as an attack. So the only thing that I can do is not to go there. So people must just do the right thing. If the church disapproves of something, just don't go there. Simple as that. Because we know that the government is promoting immorality. So that immorality cannot be approved by the church as well. So people must just do themselves favor. If the church disapproves of something, then don't go there. Simple as that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much for your comment. Steve?
You see, I think first maybe let's also talk about the first question that was asked earlier about whether the scriptures of the Bible will change or not. You see, LGBTI persons are not responsible of that. It's how the interpretation might affect their life, because it's negative attributes that might be echoed by the faith leaders that might affect the well-being or that will cause harm to the individual. Now, two, the question that was asked now by Tsepiso, it's important to understand that everyone grows up in a family and they belong somewhere. And a lot of LGBTI persons were brought up in families that have been leading a faith life. And now when people are growing up and they're being taught love, they're being taught principles of non-judgmental and so forth. But when somebody comes and start identifying, you know, in a particular sexual orientation or gender identity, that's when the church wants to discriminate. You did not discriminate when the child was born. Now, that child has never said that I'm here as a lesbian whatsoever, but today we want to judge them when they are in love with other people. So, what exactly is the church promoting? Hate or love?
Okay, we've got Edwell on the line. Welcome, Edwell. Please go ahead with your question or comment.
Yes, how are you, ma'am?
I'm fine, thanks, and you?
Very well, thanks. Speaking to Mrs. Atwell, Pali in Mzumkulu.
Okay.
In Kenya. Let me firstly remind the people out there in the studio that God created only two people, a male and a female. That's only. If someone is a male, it must be living a life of a male. It can't be a same person. It's a male on other way. She's a girl on other way. I don't know what I can ask this. It's out of order, even in court principles. It's out of order. People must stick to the rules of God. They must not do their own things, because God will beat them one day. They must live one life. That's only. We can't have a marriage of a girl with another girl. That's an embarrassment. I don't know what I can ask or what I can say on this issue, because it's an embarrassment for the South Africans. It's an embarrassment for our life. I don't know what you can say about this thing, but it's an embarrassment. It's out of order to the rules of God. Those pastors.
Okay, thanks so much, Atwell. Steve, would you like to reply to that?
You see, the rules of God, it's also how they are interpreted. And you know, when we speak about men and women, LGBTI persons are men and women, are female, male, and we also have intersex. And now, you see what's interesting about people who speaks about embarrassment, and it's selective embarrassment that we want to talk about, that needs to be questioned as well. And this is why I'm saying negative attributes that might contribute to harm individuals should also be questioned. And that's why we say protection, it's in the law. We can't say government, it's promoting immorality. No, government wants to take care of all its citizens, ensure the dignity and integrity of individuals in this country should be protected, and that includes LGBTI persons. Until Jesus comes, maybe Jesus can then say something else to those individuals. But for now, we cannot allow churches to promote hate, or if they promote hate, then it might be addressed, or it has to be addressed.
All right, so thank you so much, Steve. That will be all for today. I'd like to come back to you, Pastor Lazarus. I mean, when the US pastor Steve Anderson was banned from South Africa for his anti-gay comments, I mean, we didn't see the church march or even petition against this decision, and I think that's why people see, you know, there's really a difference in how Christians view this issue.
Yeah, I see that as you know, the church as a whole, countrywide, worldwide, has, as I said to you, the Bible as its sacred scripture, as its constitution. And before I just respond to that, I just want to quickly slot this in. Yeah. Is that also to my learned colleague also, that there has been, the Bible has to be dealt in its entire totality in the sacred scriptures. So one must understand, in the Old Testament we had law, and now we have the season of grace. So if you look at a simple example, in the Old Testament, if there was a prostitute, she was chased down the city and stoned. But if you look at the New Testament, when grace appeared through Jesus, he looked at the woman, now in a different scenario, and he approached grace to her and come and said, now go and sin no more. So there was a covering, there was no attack on the individual. So you want us to understand, and coming back to your question, is that the church cannot march for everything, because as much as the bill is here, we need to understand that there are Chapter 9 institutions. There are currently, as my colleague Steve says, that there are already existing law. We are some 20 years in democracy now. There are existing law, there's existing organization, Chapter 9 institutions that are there to protect the very rights that we are talking about this afternoon.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid time is up. And that was Question Time for today. A big thank you to my guests and to you at home for watching.